Hey everyone, welcome back. You know those near-death experiences everyone's talking about, the ones that make you question everything?
Yeah,
That's what we're diving into today.
definitely.
I've got this fascinating article about neurophilosopher Patricia Churchland
Yep.
and how she interprets the research of Dr. Pim van Lommel, who's also a big name in the NDE world.
Right, a cardiologist.
Yeah, so we're going to look at these experiences, these stories, and try to figure out, are we really getting a glimpse beyond this life? Or is it, just the brain doing its thing?
Well, it really gets to the core of what consciousness even is.
Right, like where is it?
Exactly.
Is it just our brains, or is there something more?
Huge questions.
So Patricia Churchland, she's a big name in neurophilosophy, and she's firmly in the camp that consciousness, and that includes NDEs, comes from the brain.
Yeah, she's a materialist.
Right.
So that means she believes that everything, even our thoughts and feelings, can all be boiled down to physical processes in the brain.
So like no soul, no spirit, just neurons firing.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. That's the materialist view.
So for her, those classic NDE things, the out-of-body feeling, the light, it's all just the brain kind of misfiring.
Exactly. And she points out that only a small percentage of people who are resuscitated, brought back from the brink, actually report having NDEs.
That's true.
If it was really a glimpse of the afterlife, wouldn't it be more common? Like, shouldn't everyone have that experience?
Yeah, you'd think so.
Another point she makes is that some drugs can create similar experiences. Ketamine, for example.
Oh, right.
It can cause those out-of-body sensations, the feeling of detachment from reality.
So she's saying maybe the same mechanisms in the brain are at play in NDEs, just triggered differently.
That's the idea. And she asks a pretty thought-provoking question. If heaven is waiting for us, why don't all resuscitated patients report going there?
Good point. Makes you think. But let's bring in Dr. Pim van Lommel now. He's done some really influential research on NDEs, even published in The Lancet.
Very respected medical journal.
Yeah, so his work kind of throws a wrench in things, because he says the brain IS involved, but maybe there's more to this story.
Right, it's not so simple.
Wait, but doesn't Churchland actually use Van Lommel's work to support her argument? Didn't he say you can stimulate the temporal lobe or mess with blood gas levels and get NDE-like experiences?
She does use those findings. She's pointing to the brain's ability to create these unusual sensations, but
But
Van Lommel makes a distinction.
Oh.
He says, yes, the brain is involved, but NDEs are different.
Different how?
For one thing, they often have a lasting impact on people, like a profound transformative effect.
Yeah.
It's not like a fleeting drug experience. People's lives are changed. Their values, their outlook on life, their relationships, even their fear of death can diminish.
So it's not just the experience itself, it's what happens afterward.
Exactly. And that's harder to explain away as just some random brain activity.
So he's saying a purely neurological event wouldn't cause those kinds of lasting changes.
Right. It raises the question of whether there's something more going on, something beyond just the physical brain.
Okay, so we've got this back and forth. Churchland saying it's all in the brain, Van Lommel saying, well, maybe not so fast.
And then you bring in Alex Tsakiris, who's interviewed both of them.
Right. And he's definitely more on the side of NDEs being something more than just the brain doing weird things.
Yeah, he actually takes issue with how Churchland interprets Van Lommel's research.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He says she oversimplifies it. She's focusing on the parts that fit her argument, but not the whole picture.
So he's saying she's picking and choosing.
Kind of, yeah. And he thinks she's avoiding the deeper questions about consciousness itself, the really big existential questions that NDEs bring up.
Right. Like, what happens when we die? Is there something beyond this life?
Exactly. Tsakiris is critical of scientists who dismiss anything that can't be measured or explained within the materialist worldview.
So he's saying they're too quick to dismiss anything that doesn't fit their model.
Yeah, basically. He thinks there's a resistance to even considering other possibilities.
So we've got these three perspectives. Churchland, the staunch materialist, Van Lommel, somewhere in the middle, and Tsakiris, who's advocating for exploring those bigger questions.
Exactly. And it all comes down to this fundamental question. Is consciousness purely physical, or is there something more?
And that's where we're going to pick up next time. We'll look at the evidence both sides present, and we'll see what conclusions, if any, we can draw.
And most importantly, what it all means for us.
So stay tuned. This deep dive is just getting started.
So let's look at the evidence each side brings to the table. Churchland, as a materialist, she relies a lot on neuroscience.
Makes sense.
Like there's research showing that you can stimulate certain parts of the brain, and people have experiences similar to NDEs.
Oh, like that temporal lobe stimulation thing I've heard about.
Yeah, exactly. Surgeons use it sometimes. They apply a little electrical current to specific brain areas.
Yeah.
It can trigger these weird sensations, like feeling out of your body, seeing things, even a feeling of transcendence.
Wow.
So Churchland says, see, the brain can create these experiences all on its own.
No supernatural explanation needed.
Right. It's like, if you can make it happen by stimulating the brain, why look for other explanations?
So NDEs are basically just like a trick of the brain then.
That's how she sees it. She also points to research on oxygen deprivation and how certain chemicals affect the brain.
Oh.
You know, when someone's close to death, their blood pressure drops, oxygen levels change.
Right.
That can cause weird neural activity. Maybe that's what's behind NDEs.
Like when you stand up too fast and see stars. Just a glitch.
Kind of, yeah. But then you have people like Van Lommel who point to a different kind of evidence.
Oh.
They look at cases of veridical perception.
Veridical perception, what's that?
It's when someone during an NDE accurately describes things they couldn't have known through their normal senses.
So like what? Give me an example.
Okay, so there are cases where people were clinically dead, no brain activity at all,
Whoa.
but then later they can describe things that happened while they were unconscious.
Really? Like what kind of things?
Like conversations in the operating room or even stuff that happened outside the hospital, miles away.
No way. But if they were dead, how could they know that?
That's the thing. It's hard to explain if consciousness is just the brain. If the brain's not working, how are they having these experiences, let alone accurate ones?
Yeah, that doesn't fit with the materialist view, does it?
Not really. So it makes you wonder if there's more to consciousness than we currently understand.
But I'm sure people try to debunk these stories, right? Like maybe it's coincidence or they're just making it up.
Oh, sure, there are skeptics who say that. They say maybe the memories are false or exaggerated. But the people who believe NDEs are something more, they say many of these cases have been carefully investigated.
Like by doctors and stuff?
Yeah, and witnesses back up the story, so it's not so easy to dismiss.
So basically, we don't know for sure what to make of this veridical perception stuff.
It's still a mystery, yeah. And that's why more research is needed. And an open mind.
Open to the possibility that it might not just be the brain.
Right. Van Lommel, he argues that maybe our scientific models are just too limited right now. We need to expand our thinking about the mind-brain connection.
To account for these weird experiences.
Exactly. So it's not just about proving or disproving an afterlife. It's about pushing the boundaries of what we know about consciousness itself.
Okay, I get that. But I'm still kind of stuck on how Churchland and Van Lommel can use the same research to argue opposite things. It's confusing.
I know, right? But it shows how important it is to think critically.
To not just take things at face value.
Right. Scientists are people too. They have their own biases. They interpret data through their own lens.
So it's not about one side being right and the other wrong, necessarily?
Not always, no. It's more about recognizing that we don't have all the answers. There might be multiple valid interpretations. Like Churchland focuses on the brain, the physical stuff we can measure. Van Lommel, he's more open to the idea that consciousness might go beyond that.
So, different ways of approaching the same mystery.
Exactly. And that tension makes this whole debate so fascinating.
Okay, so we've talked about what consciousness is or might be.
Yeah.
Now, what does all this mean for us? Like, practically speaking.
Ah, the big question. Well, if Churchland's right, and consciousness is all about the brain,
And what?
then when we die, that's it. Lights out. No soul that goes on, no heaven or anything.
Wow, that's pretty bleak.
It can be, yeah. But it also puts the focus on this life, on making the most of our time here because it's all we have.
Makes every moment precious.
Exactly. But then, if Van Lommel's right, if consciousness eyes more than the brain,
Then things get really interesting.
right, death might not be the end. It opens up all these possibilities, like what happens to that non-physical consciousness? Where does it go?
So many questions.
Exactly. And maybe the people who have NDEs, they're really getting a glimpse of something beyond what we can understand right now.
It's like they're coming back with clues, but we don't know how to decipher them yet.
Maybe. It definitely suggests that our current scientific knowledge might be incomplete.
Like we're just starting to understand this whole consciousness thing.
Right. And instead of trying to force these experiences into neat categories, maybe we should just embrace the mystery for now.
Acknowledge that we don't know everything.
Exactly. It's humbling, in a way.
So where do we go from here? How do we even begin to study something as slippery as consciousness?
Well, we need to keep researching NDEs, but with an open mind. And we need a multidisciplinary approach.
What does that mean?
It means bringing together different fields, not just neuroscience. Psychology, philosophy, maybe even spirituality.
So we need a new way of doing science.
Maybe. A way that's not afraid to explore the stuff we can't easily measure or explain.
The really big questions.
Yeah, exactly. And it's important to remember that this isn't just some theoretical debate. NDEs have real implications for how we live our lives, how we face death, even how we understand our place in the universe.
It makes you realize that science isn't just about collecting facts. It's about trying to understand what it means to be human.
And that's something we can all connect with. So I'm curious, what are our listeners thinking about all this?
Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into these NDEs, it feels like we've just scratched the surface.
It's a really complex topic, yeah.
There are many big questions.
Yeah, about consciousness, about what happens after we die, the meaning of life, even.
And we've heard from both sides now, right?
Right.
Churchland, with her focus on the brain,
The materialist perspective.
and then Van Lommel, who thinks maybe there's more to it than that.
That consciousness might be more than just neurons firing.
It's a lot to take in. I bet our listeners are out there thinking, what do I even believe?
Yeah, it can be a bit overwhelming.
Maybe some people find comfort in the idea that it's all explainable by the brain.
It's all very neat and tidy.
Yeah, but then others might be thinking, wait, what if their eye is something more? What if these NDEs are showing us that?
It definitely opens up a whole new way of looking at things.
But I think the main takeaway, no matter what you believe, is that we need to be humble.
Absolutely.
Admit that we don't have all the answers yet.
We're still figuring this stuff out.
Like, imagine a giant puzzle.
Okay.
We've got some pieces. We can see bits and pieces of the picture.
But not the whole thing.
Exactly.
And we might even have some pieces that don't fit anywhere yet.
Right. And that's where the excitement comes in, because who knows what we'll discover next.
It's all about staying curious.
So keep researching.
Right.
Keep reading those firsthand accounts. Talk to people who've had these experiences.
Keep asking those big questions.
Because this deep dive, it's not just about giving you information. It's about sparking that curiosity.
Getting you thinking.
And maybe, just maybe, it's made you look at the world a little differently.
See the mystery in everyday things.
Yeah. And appreciate how much we still have to learn.
Because ultimately, this quest to understand consciousness, it's a journey we're all on together.
And who knows where it will lead us.
Exactly.
So until next time, keep those minds open and keep exploring.
And thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We'll see you on the next one.